Welcome to the Film Channel Movie Silver Screen. In this video, we will review two incredible dramas, a war action, and an anti-war drama. With Tigak-gi, The Brotherhood of War, filmmaker Kang Ja-gyu revisited the outbreak of hostilities between North and South Korea after making a strong impression with his 1999 action movie Shiri. Furthermore, Mr. Kang appears to be consciously drawing comparisons in Tigak-gi, The Brotherhood of War. The film, which is clearly Mr. Kang's Saving Private Ryan and is set during the Korean War, begins with an elderly man visiting a graveyard, a scene that nearly mimics Mr. Spielberg's movie. It is a tribute to a previous generation of heroes. The old man in the movie is Lee Jin-seok, a war veteran with a difficult personal background, who is portrayed by Won Bin throughout the flashback sequences that make up the bulk of the movie. This gripping tale explores the catastrophic consequences of the Korean War on two brothers who are compelled to enlist in the military and take part in the fighting. An outstanding older brother, son, and fiancé, Lee Jin-tae, works at a shoeshine stand to save money for his brother Jin-seok's education. Young Shin, his future bride, is practically a perfect fit for this loving and upright family. But the good times never continue for very long, as is always the case in dramatic war movies. The entire family flees the country as war breaks out, to their uncle's house in the south, where they believe they will be safe. However, Jin-seok is found by a military unit searching the crowd for draftees and is taken into custody. Jin-tae locates him on a train that is speeding in vain, and the two brothers both wind up becoming conscripts in the ROK Army. At the front line, it quickly becomes apparent that they are on the losing side and might soon have no choice but to retreat to the sea. With his commanding commander, Jin-tae swiftly agrees to a deal. Jin-seok will be sent home if he receives a Medal of Honor. But both Jin-tae and Jin-seok don't realize that their relationship too can become a casualty of war. However, in order to obtain this reward, Jin-tae must continually put himself in risk on the battlefield, which at first frightens and then enrages his brother, who can't help but wonder whether Jin-tae is acting in this way for his own advantage or for his own personal glory. Tigak-gi, The Brotherhood of War was a huge success when it was released in South Korea, where it ended up being both the most expensive and highest-grossing production in the nation. One of the most powerful scenes in the movie shows Jin-tae and Jin-seok coming across a village that the North Korean army has left unoccupied as it retreats. After a little further investigating, they discover a group of North Korean soldiers sheltering in a tunnel after the villager were all brutally murdered. Jin-tae is planning to kill the entire group of them because he is furious, despite the fact that one of them is an old acquaintance from Seoul who was coerced into joining the North Korean army. The inmates are spared thanks to Jin-seok's intervention. Remains the breakdown of Jin-seok and Jin-tae's brotherly relationship and the blurring of lines between friend and foe that is so particular to the Korean War. Before the conflict begins, Jin-tae is described as the more distant but protective older brother and son. In order to obtain his medal and Jin-seok's freedom, Jin-tae volunteers for operations that appear to be suicide missions. He has undergone a significant metamorphosis by the end of the film as a result of his love for his brother and his growing desire for glory. Although the idea of brotherly sacrifice is a common one in Asian cinema, it is used here for reasons other than its melodramatic appeal. The movie Tigak-gi is much more ambivalent and ambiguous than Mr. Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. The title is a reference to the name South Koreans give to their national flag. Both the North and the South are represented as oppressive, cruel regimes that treat their people like nothing more than cannon fodder. If Jin-tae is a hero at all, he is a deeply flawed, bordering on insane one. Atrocities are committed by both the Northerners and the Southerners, who also summarily execute people who were coerced into working with the enemy in order to survive. Young Shin, Jin-tae's fiancé, was one of those killed, which sent Jin-tae even farther over the brink. Tigak-gi, The Brotherhood of War is an admirable work that depicts both the splendor and the anguish of the war, as well as the heroes and the victims. For any future directors who want to question Kang Ja-gyu's interpretation of the conflict, he may have established an unfair standard. The film's breadth outweighs its generic narrative. The war sequences are superbly filmed, and despite your better judgment, you can't help but get sucked into the melodrama. With a $12 million US budget, Kang's depiction makes a harsh anti-war statement. Even while Tigak-gi The Brotherhood of War's horrifying vision contains many instances of surreal beauty, it is nonetheless one of the most realistic representations of destruction on a battlefield. Inevitably, Tigak-gi The Brotherhood of War will have greater significance inside the culture in which it was created than it will have outside. This movie is remarkable because it gives Western audiences a unique glimpse into the inner conflicts and worries of a different culture. Born on the 4th of July, which is based on the same-named 1976 autobiography, centers on Vietnam War veteran and current anti-war activist Ron Kovic. Kovic enlists in the U.S. Marine Corps to carry out his patriotic obligation to serve his nation. But he feels that the America he once fought for has betrayed him when he returns home, after becoming paralyzed during his second tour. To raise awareness to struggling Vietnam War veterans, he decides to become an anti-war and human rights activist. Kovic returned from the war with a broken body, but it took a while for the damage to trickle down to his mind and spirit. When he finally hit rock bottom, he was a despondent, resentful man who turned to alcohol, drugs, and Mexican whorehouses for solace. He then started searching outside of himself for a bigger pattern in his life, and it was this pattern that gave birth to his best-selling autobiography, Born on the 4th of July. The Kovic story has been a long-time project for writer-director Stone, who based his previous movie Platoon on his own military service. The project had a number of stars and studios attached to the project, but it kept getting cancelled. Young Ron Kovic, a standout athlete and high school hero, was a kid ready to hear that message, which meant his recruitment. He was prepared to enlist when Marine recruiters visited his high school. There was no question in his mind that there was a war going on in Vietnam. His only concern was missing the action. Even though he was aware that there was a potential he would get hurt or killed, he still desired to make a sacrifice for his country. Every nation needs to have a spirit like his from time to time. The Vietnam War's fatal weakness is that it was unjustified. But how could a proud small-town kid know that? Young Kovic is followed from his last prom to the front lines. Because he still appears to be Cruz in these scenes, young and open-faced, we wondered if he would be able to transition into the horror that we knew was going to happen. He was. The eldest child of an A&P manager and his deeply spiritual Catholic wife, Ron Kovic, grows up in Massapequa, Long Island. He is a gifted athlete who does well in high school sports. Kovic, a devoted patriot, assures his parents that he would give his life in defense of his nation. But when he is deployed to Vietnam, all of his fantasies about the romance and majesty of combat are destroyed. He mistakenly murders a Marine from his own unit and some innocent youngsters there. He is paralyzed from the chest down, after being injured in battle, and returning home in a wheelchair. He stays with his family for a while and thrives on the love it, or leave it mentality of America. Kovic quickly succumbs to an alcoholic depression though. He leaves for Mexico where he meets another injured veteran who represents his own self-destructiveness and resentment. Kovic makes the decision to change his life. Oliver Stone goes back to Vietnam to portray another side of the conflict, but this time the focus is on an actual soldier who has been affected by his time spent in combat. And it's more emotionally charged and tragic than Stone's Platoon. Born on the 4th of July explores what happens to a soldier once he returns from the front lines, whereas Platoon focused on a group of soldiers confronting the horrors of Vietnam. Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July lacks such a sound. Instead, it is merely the thin, whiny sound of Tom Cruise trying to go through an epic genesis, going from a gung-ho Vietnam War soldier to a wild-eyed veteran in a wheelchair, yelling at Nixon henchmen at a Republican convention. In this film, Tom Cruise performs better than he ever has. An actor of his ability needs to be able to express a wide range of emotions in this role. He must succeed in order for the movie to succeed. Fortunately, he delivers a lovely commitment to the role. Kovic fights past the opposition as though it's his last stand despite being shot in the leg. It's a fantastic scene that shows Cruise's acting ability. His portrayal in Born on the 4th of July is so excellent that it sustains the narrative. Stone doesn't need to say everything in the discussion because he can convey his message through Cruise's face and voice. When he travels to Georgia, he confesses his guilt to the Marines' family there, which marks the beginning of his journey toward self-realization and political radicalization. After that, he forms a coalition with Vietnam veterans against a war and plans a protest for the 1972 Republican National Convention in Miami. The movie ends soon before Kovac is going to speak at the New York City Democratic Convention in 1976. Oliver Stone, who won an Oscar for Best Director, directed the explosive, episodic, and emotionally upsetting movie, Born on the 4th of July. And perhaps it's for the best that Stone waited this long, since it enabled him to cast Tom Cruise in the key role. You won't be prepared for what Tom Cruise does in Born on the 4th of July by anything he has done before. Although he has long been recognized as a brilliant young American actor, it wasn't until his breakout part in Risky Business when the actor and character were perfectly matched. The special effects show in Top Gun completely overpowered him. His behavior in important closing scenes were not explained by the color of money. A sly attempt to capitalize on his attractiveness was made with Cocktail. He appeared to be holding back from his own presence even in Rain Man, as if he were hiding something. Brown-tinted war scenes, an even more disgusting VI hospital infested with rats, and the now standard Stone drug anthemic scene. In Platoon, it was the tracks of My Tears, and here it is, My Girl. Stone underplays and imitates where he ought to be original, and overemphasizes where he could, along with co-adapter Kovac and sentimental composer John Williams. The subsequent scenes, which take place in a military hospital, are brutally honest. The movie depicts a military healthcare system that is severely overwhelmed, which will bring back all of your helpless wrath if you have ever been helpless in a sick bed and unable to summon assistance. Kovac cries out at one point for a suction pump to drain a wound that could cost him his leg. Additionally, a disoriented doctor talks incoherently about cutbacks of budget and equipment constraints in the care of the injured veterans. In a moment of Dantean wickedness, Stone portrays Kovac in Mexico with other paralyzed warriors, paying for women and drugs to dull the pain before he was unexpectedly abandoned in the desert with another veteran, without a way to return to their wheelchairs or to town. In a homage to Platoon, Willem Dafoe, a co-star of that movie, plays the other disabled veteran in the desert. Tom Berenger, another co-star, plays the Marine who delivers the recruitment speech in the film's opening scenes. One of the year's top films, Born on the 4th of July, is one of those rare films that takes the right steps immediately and never makes a mistake after that. Many traps could have been set for Stone, Kovac, and Cruise to fall into, but they avoid all of them. Even though this movie depicts a great deal of misery, bloodshed and pain, and is equally at home on battlefields as in hospital wards, it starts off with a philosophical viewpoint, not a battle, injury, or recovery as depicted in the film. Rather, it is the story of an American who alters his perspective on the conflict. Even if they could have taken innumerable other turns, the filmmakers recognize that is the core of their story and remain true to it. This movie is about philosophy, and it's told through the eyes of a young guy who had to pay hard for his school. The film is lengthy, but its themes and plot are emotionally stirring. This film is a masterpiece thanks to Tom Cruise's passionate performance and Oliver Stone's skillful direction.